Wonderful.
So one of my classmates is also going to join. Perfect.
I only heard one of our something is supposed to join, and then I think you cut out. I apologize.
Oh, sorry, that was one of the.
Okay, yeah, I can't hear you very well.
Still can't hear me?
Okay, you're good now.
So we're just gonna wait for maybe about 5 more minutes or so.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I can check you in here.
Anyways, it's nice to meet you, Maria. And I'm in Madrid, and I'm sort of classmates with Jermaine, but I come from India.
Hi, I'm Marcos.
So it's nice to be here, and I'm just gonna kill some time while we're waiting for everyone to get in.
Yeah, thanks, Arjun. Great to meet you too. It's nice that you know Jermaine. I know him well, and it's just so neat. I heard about the journey to getting to Spain through Jermaine, and so it's nice to see some of his classmates. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Thanks for
absolutely.
taking time out, everyone, to be here.
If you can. I don't see your name.
No, we're looking forward to it. I mean, one of the reasons why, well, at least one of the reasons why I came to IE had a lot to do with social impact. So this is extremely relevant to me and my interests. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to present to us.
Oh, that's great. I'm such I don't know if there's even a politically correct word, but I'm a dork for social enterprise. I just, one of my taglines that you'll see here, it's really the only way to do business. And yeah, I'm just so honored to be here and yeah, hear stories. I hope that I'll be talking, and that's great and everything. Me talking my story, and also how to actually create a persuasive speech. But I hope that we can all just chat after this, and I think that's where we'll gain the most insight, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is this Jermaine, do you have people live in that room as well?
In the classroom as well.
Oh, great. Okay. Wonderful.
I'm not sure where it's adjusted to today. How you doing? I'm Jason.
Did I hear someone say Jason?
No, he was just talking to someone in the room.
Oh, okay, great.
Let's go.
Hi, Maria. So one of the things we do have a handful of people who is just check them in. That's one of the.
Yeah, that's great. I'm in no rush.
For contact tracing, but.
Yeah. So we have, and I see Susie. Hi, Susie. Great to see you. And then Sophia and Martine. Great to see your faces. Sophia, are you also in Madrid, or are you somewhere else?
Yes, I'm in Madrid right now. I'm studying a different master's, so I'm in digital marketing, but I'm also part of the public speaking club. So Perfect. We're very excited to have you speak today.
Excellent. Yeah, digital marketing, that's exactly what we do, to be quite honest with you. At the end of the day, if we don't have digital marketing, we don't really have a medium to get anything out to, right? Excellent. And Oriol, did I say that right?
Yeah, that's my name. Hi.
Wonderful. Are you in Madrid as well?
Yes, I'm also in Madrid.
Wow.
I promised last week that I would be in person, face to face, and I would meet all the wonderful people in Madrid. But unfortunately, my flatmate just got tested positive, and I have to stay here 10 days, and I have to go.
Stay put and increase that immunity. Yeah.
Yep.
Good, good. Thank you for joining. Hi, is it Suzanne? Yep. Or yeah,
Suzanne?
Suzanne. Okay.
Yeah.
Great to meet you, Suzanne. Are you in Madrid right now, or?
Yeah, I'm actually Jermaine's wife.
Oh, okay, Susie. Okay, I'm used to seeing Susie.
Yeah, it's my like full name on the screen, but yeah.
Great. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I'm actually back in the States. I was a social enterprise major, so.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah, we have Roxanne, she's stateside as well. Martine, are you in Madrid?
Yes, I'm in Madrid. I'm in campus right now, just in a different room from everybody else.
Okay, so you're in the room. Very cool. Okay, that's great. Oh, wonderful. So fun.
So I'm gonna jump in. Great presentation prepared. So just to give a little background on Maria, we met a really inspirational person. You know, I think she perfectly marries the passion and really combines those two pieces. So she's really someone, again, that combines those two components well. It's great, and letting us know about how public speaking or persuasive speaking, dealing with different stakeholders, whether that's, you know, CEOs of business, a lot of different things that she's learned over the years on this journey that she's been on. And so,
Thank you.
but yeah, we're looking forward to sharing. So I'm gonna go ahead and be. And then we'll open up for some questions once you're done, okay?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jermaine. I really appreciate it. I would like have everyone clap for Jermaine, you know, but thank you, Jermaine. Thank you so much. I want to thank the university and particularly the speaking club. This is just wonderful. And, you know, when I was in university, I'm like, why didn't I join the speaking club, you know? But I am here today speaking to the speaking club, which is quite wonderful. And thank you, Jermaine, for the introduction. I don't know if it cut out for other people. It did. Okay, so it cut out a little bit, Jermaine. So I'll just quickly, I believe, recap what I heard, which was we met a few years ago in Argentina doing mission work. And he thinks I'm inspiring. And he thinks that I marry social impact and business well together. I think Jermaine said something along those lines. So hopefully I can live up to that and help everyone be inspired and really go after what you guys have been called to do, which is really you're destined for greatness. And I'm just honored to be here. So yes, I am Maria Laricella, and I'm here to do persuasive speaking and I firmly believe that social enterprise is the only way to do business. So imagine if you could communicate with such conviction that every time you presented, you could forecast your audience's behavior. What if you only spoke from a place of genuine heart and conviction? And how much further could your message, your point go, and how much more results would you have gained, the desired results would you have gained if you only spoke from a place of genuine heart and conviction? 8 years ago, I set out on a journey that would change my life completely. I would be speaking to people from all ages, nationalities, countries, levels of profession and government. And I was given this vision to change the world. And now I had to convince the world to give me the opportunity to do just that. I am Maria Laricella, and I just want to reference here, I'm actually now Maria Indenbosch. So I have a new name, and I am the founder of Humanity del Sol and the CEO of Humanity Wine Co. So as you can imagine, founding and operating 2 organizations, I have had a lot of failure and I've had a lot of successes. But the one thing I could say that is above everything, before I could have moved on to see any fruit in what I'm doing, I had to be transformed. And so I want to go on to our first point, where I believe that it's the most important aspect, which is if before you can persuade anyone of anything, you have to first undergo a transformation of yourself. And so it's your mindset. Before you can ever persuade anyone of anything, you need to get your mindset right, and it will determine how far you can get. I believe that it really is the single most important aspect to any person or organization's success. It's their ability to think. And so I don't mean, just big thinking kind of think. I'm thinking, how many nations I'm going to be in, how am I going to infiltrate the market? Am I going to become the category king? Yeah, that's big thinking. But rather, I'm actually asking you to think of things more thoroughly. Take time to ponder thoughts. Take time to set aside time to develop habits that will trigger that kind of thinking. Ponder, sit down and set aside 15 minutes a week. If you can set aside 4 hours a month, what would that look like? Are you able to develop, what do you believe in? What is your life's mission? These kind of questions that don't just ride through life without taking the time to sit and think. Develop good thinking processes into your life. When you start to give yourself that room, that freedom to think, your beliefs are going to be shaped. Your convictions are going to be super rooted in your heart. You're going to increase in your ability. You will also have the opportunity to see the gaps in your thinking, in your own thinking. So I remember when I first started, I was gung-ho on creating a nonprofit. It's because what society told me, that was the only way to change, someone's life or the world. And so it was nonprofit, nonprofit, nonprofit. Thankfully, I had the opportunity to slow down enough and think this through and gain insight from other people and bounce my thinking off of others. And I was able to develop this into a much larger operation and a much larger impact. And so I love John Maxwell's quote: "Those who develop the process of good thinking can rule themselves, even while under an oppressive ruler or in other difficult circumstances. In short, good thinkers are successful." So no matter what happens, even if you end up working for a huge company and you're just like this, you think that you're this little guy, if you learn to think, you will become an asset anywhere you go and with whatever you do. Again, one of my favorite quotes by Einstein: "Thinking is hard work. That is why so few do it." If you can develop a habit of thinking, guys, this is going to change everything. This will change how you speak persuasively. This will change how you live life in all areas of your life. And so believing in your topic, I would say, comes after thinking. When you think things through, you can then start to develop that deep-seated belief and conviction in what you're actually speaking about, right? So if you don't believe in what you're asking your audience to believe in, you probably won't get very far. If you think you're not going to be successful, you won't be. If you think that your message doesn't mean anything to others, it probably won't. So know who you are and know where you're going so that you can step into the roles in which you were made for. If you think that your vision can change the world, I promise you, you will change the world. If you think that your point of view is one to be adopted by others, it will be. And if you believe in yourself, others will too. I remember coming home from my first trip in Argentina in 2012. There was a fire inside of me that was so deep and roaring. People could feel it. They could see it. They knew something happened inside of me that just transformed who I was. I had enough time between the flight home and getting back to work to think about the kids that I met on my trip in Argentina. And I had gone to an orphanage. They had about 25 orphans at that point. And I was able to think about what that trip was all about. How did knowing those kids change my life? I thought through all the possibilities of what I could do to change their world and their destiny, because at that point, it wasn't enough that they changed me. I knew that going back to the USA, I had opportunities that they could never dream of. And I knew that I had the opportunity to change their destiny because I was in the USA and I had what it took. I felt I had what it took, the desire, the burning desire to change their lives. So I wholeheartedly felt that they didn't have to end up like their parents and into a cycle of poverty, abuse, abandonment, and sex slavery, right? I knew that I knew that I knew that I knew that they could be different, just like I was. So I was abused physically and sexually from the time I was 5 years old, well into my 20s. And through therapy and education, I was able to change my patterns. I was able to be delivered from everything I had gone through. And at that point, I knew that I was destined for greatness. This greatness, though, it wasn't what you hear some people say, like, I was destined to be a millionaire, and like, that's great. We definitely need the money, right? But it was a very different kind of feeling that I had. I knew that I was going to do something major that was not self-serving. However, I didn't know how. And so it wasn't until I met these kids down in Argentina that my thinking that I was destined for greatness would actually be met with this aha moment. I was destined for greatness to help this sector of society. I knew that it was because I thought I was destined for greatness, that I knew that my thinking had finally caught up to the reality. Oh, and it was only after that I saw the poverty. I heard the sex trafficking stories. I could hug these kids with such love and genuine affection that my destiny was met only through their circumstances. And I don't know if that makes any sense. And if anyone has any questions, I ask to leave those for after this. And I can't wait to talk more about that particularly. Yeah, so my thinking was met with a call to action. What was I going to do? First of all, I had no money. Second of all, no donors, no grants, no investors, no church. I mean, I had nothing that a normal nonprofit would have to attack such a mission, to try and attain such results, right? That I wanted to attain. So I really had to think about how I was going to make the difference of these kids' lives. Again, it went back to thinking. I had to sit down, pen and paper, and just write. What was I going to do that was different than everyone else that went down to this orphanage for the past 30 years and didn't make a dent? Who was I going to get to join me in this mission financially? At that point, speaking and writing became a second, it was almost second nature to me. It became this, I didn't realize that I was actually speaking persuasively. I didn't know. I just knew that I needed to speak from what I was feeling, and I needed to get people behind me because I couldn't do it without them, right? So short after my trip, in 2012, I got home, I quit my job. We can talk about this later. I quit my job and I threw myself into developing this work. To this date, that fundraiser, I created a fundraiser because I knew I needed money. That was my first fundraiser, and that was my first public speaking engagement. It was a disaster, guys. It was an absolute disaster, but I knew I needed to do it. And this is where crafting your introduction comes in. So first you think, guys, just create time for thinking. The second point, crafting your introduction. You'll see here all the points. What if, a great quote, inspirational story. I always say start with the solution first. If you can start with that solution, if you have that opportunity. So as I began to craft my speech, the first one that I was talking about, I had nowhere to start. I didn't know where to go. It was very different. I'm not one who goes on Google and searches, at least in 2012. I wasn't someone who just went on Google and searched how to do something. I just figured it out myself. Again, another point to probably talk about later. Don't quit your job and don't not ask for help. So as I began to craft that speech, I instinctually knew that I had to give my audience the space to imagine what they could do with me, right? Not just state some facts and this is what I need, but how could I get them to see that they are needed, not just to give me money, but they are needed to be a part of the mission. They were needed to be included, So my first introduction was, like I said, an absolute disaster. Looking back on the video, which I should probably share with you folks, to like what not to do video. It was a disaster and I cringe when I look at it. However, what I now use as my introduction was in the speech. It just wasn't in the right place of where it needed to be. So I would say start your persuasive speeches with a dynamic quote. What if, imagine if, those are the ones I really love. Also controversial questions. This is something I'm starting to formulate now in my speeches, is controversial questions. You want to give them the opportunity to get them to step in your world. At the end of the day, they've taken the time out and you want them to come, you rope them into your world and your reality, and it prompts them to start to think outside of their confines, because we all have cognitive biases. We all have these preset notions and beliefs, right? So we want to get those confines, like the walls, to come down. So for instance, I'm currently working, I'm toying around with this new intro that is for me, I think it's brilliant, but I'd love your feedback later on. So we're going to work through this, how to create a persuasive speech with my story, and also a new speech that I'm actually crafting up. And I thought this would be fun to do with you folks. So this is my crafting of an introduction. Do you believe that it is okay for 700,000 orphans to have no support when they hit 18 years old and are asked to leave the system? It's kind of like, how could you not agree? Like, we have to help them, right? I mean, when you ask a question like that, it's like, well, of course it's not okay to let orphans who age out go on the street with no viable skills, no support, no financial support. They have nothing. That's of course that's not okay. So all of a sudden the audience, for me, I think they start to think, well, yeah, of course we want to help, right? So it gives me the opportunity to go right into the next space of the introduction. And this is really scientific. At the end of the day, you are literally stating a thesis. You are stating a theory. You are stating what you believe to be the premises or something that needs to be proven, right? You are stating that here at the next space of your introduction, right? So I would say something along the lines of, the business sector can have the largest, most scalable solution to provide for the needs of all orphans in the United States of America, right? So for me, that would be my actual, my thesis statement, right? So then I would say, when you come into this, you state a preview of what's to come, right? And this happens quite fast, right? It's not like me right now, maybe taking 5 or 10 minutes to create or help you understand this introduction, right? It's going to happen rather quickly. And so I don't always do this, the statement, the preview statement. It depends on the audience. It depends on who I'm talking to, but you want to emphasize the problem, but you only want to imply the solution, because that's going to be in the body, right? And then from there, you also give them a bit of how they can participate, that they're in need, they're needed to hear and listen to what I'm about to say, because they're included in the solution, right? So I would say something based on my thesis and my previous thesis statement. I would say we are going to talk about some of the key solutions that businesses can take to leave a lasting impact, not only on their bottom line, but to the humanitarian sector, and how your company can join this pioneering movement, right? So now I gave them a little bit of what the solution is, that they're going to be able to have solutions to this issue, and that it's their business, and they will have, and not only a lasting impact on their bottom line, but now they can also participate in changing the humanitarian effort that we're going after. And so here is super fun for me, crafting the body. And this, you're going to start to hear a little more of my story when I start speaking about the kind of body that I usually construct through our stories. This is a time when I often share my conviction and my passion. The love I have for these kids and what I believe to be the only solution for breaking these vicious cycles that they have. This is where I don't even realize often unconsciously that I am persuading people. And I've said this in earlier, I don't even realize I'm doing it. And Daniel Pink, he's an incredible communicator. He wrote, "It's not about tricking people, it's more beautiful than that." And I think the reaction you want to get out of people is really more beautiful than that, only when you can speak genuinely from a place of pure heart. When this is in the body, you're stating, right? You're stating your problem. You are going to tell the stories. The heartstrings are going to be pulled here. The pain points of your audience. You're going to be starting with your why. I'm sure you've heard of Simon Sinek, starting with your why, finding your why. If you haven't, please go out and read those books. They're phenomenal. Actually, our kids, they read that book in the first portion. The first time they enter into our organization, they read that book. Finding your why, because if you don't know your why, it's going to be very difficult again, right? Going back to thinking and all that. So as you are stating the problem, for me, I always go to a story. So when I first started back in 2012, the story I started with was Jose, and he had a massive tumor here. And his family thought that he was, not good, or I don't even know what they thought, but they discarded him. They didn't want him around because he was, handicapped or, just not normal. And so he was given up because he had a tumor here. And when I met him, he never wanted to have photos taken because he felt ugly. At least that's what he was told his whole life. So that's all he thought, right? So I started with that story. And when I told people that all he wanted to do is play violin, and I needed to do whatever possible to get him a violin and also get the surgery, I had to pay for the surgery to get the tumor removed. I was able to tell a story. And that story is what got people to take their wallets out and start paying. And they paid for the surgery and paid for the violin. Jose, he never took photos, and it wasn't until my last day at the orphanage on my first trip where at that point, like I was there 9 days, and every day, hey, Jose, you want to take a photo? You want to take a photo? You want to take a photo? No, Maria, no, Maria, no, Maria. On the last day, no, second to last day, we played soccer. And as we were playing soccer, so a lot of the kids played without socks. They didn't have socks. They just put their feet into sneakers, and that was it. And so we were playing, and he fell to the ground, and I ran to him, and he was like just in agonizing pain. And I'm like, okay, are you okay? And he says, no, there's something in my foot. There's something in my foot. So I took his shoe off, and he had no socks on. And it dawned on me, he has no socks. Like, why do they have no socks? They couldn't afford socks. They just couldn't afford socks. So he had a needle, not a thorn. He had a thorn. So I went, I took it out, I cleaned it up, and then we got back to playing. And I don't know what happened, but in that moment, he started to trust me. The next day, I had an ice cream party, and I was, scooping ice cream for everybody. And he came up to me, and he calls me now Tia Maria. That means aunt. For those who speak Spanish, you know that. But he called me Tia Maria. And I tell you guys that like a moment like flooded over me. And it was beautiful. So I told that story, and he relied on me, he relied on me to get the money for him and to get him the support he needed. He didn't know I was doing that, but he knew I was there for something. And that story was the first story that got me obviously in tears, but that got people to think about, oh, this isn't just a girl who has who's like on a mission to just do something, but she knows these people. And so I say start with the story. There's a story that we now start with. So that was the first story. And the second story now that we start with, that I start with, is about Diana. And if you follow us on social media, you know about Diana because we've been talking about her for about a year. So when she left the orphanage, she was 19 years old, and she had the brain of an 8-year-old. She was so severely molested and abused that when she got out, by the time she was 19 of the orphanage system, she had nowhere to go. So she went back to her father and her brothers, and they raped her. That's why she had to, she was taken away from her parents, was because especially her brother, the rape was so severe, and her mother, before she died, asked for her daughters to be taken away. And so when she left, she had nowhere to, she needed to get out of her father and her brother's home. And apparently she left and she started sleeping around, right? So at the end of the day, that she just wanted love. And hoping that this man that slept with her and then got her pregnant would stay, but he ended up leaving. So she had nowhere and no one until we came in. And we came in 9 months after her baby was born. And she now says, and we have a quote from her, "They make me feel I can do things I never thought I could do. They help me to take care of my home, my son, and myself." So my next point is, somehow I do this unconsciously. I'm persuading my audience because I love them, right? Like, I think about these kids. I'm sorry, everyone. I think about them, and I didn't realize at first, but now, after 8 years, I understand that I'm a woman, I'm a grown woman. And my passion and conviction for our kids, that's what makes people see what we're doing as important and viable, And when I begin to talk about our youth, their faces come to my mind. There is something that, sorry guys, I remember I told you I forget the the PowerPoint. But when I see their faces, I have the opportunity to, when I'm speaking about them, and this is why I get so emotional, I literally can feel them, right? I can feel their hugs and I could smell their hair. And once I knew their story, somehow I was able to put myself in their shoes. And this was absolutely terrifying, yet very human for me. And I think it's very human for you folks. And so I would say that the most important part in your actual crafting of the body, so you state the problem, and this is your highest priority, this is the pain points, this is everything that you have to do to let people know that this is a big deal for you. And I implore you to do the same thing. Find that point of connection and let people, let it sit in your mind, and then let people feel that from you. And I always get upset when I cry in my speeches, because I don't think I've gone one speech without crying. Inevitably the tears always well up in my eyes and I can't speak. And I hate that, because you want to be like this, tough, businesswoman who, can get through all this. And yet at the end of the day, the human side takes over. And oftentimes speaking, professionals tell you to pause. I think actually Steve Jobs did them right. If I'm correct, he just like said something and then he paused for like a minute. And it was like the most remarkable speech of all times and all this stuff. That pause is really great, has a great effect. However, for me, it happens unwillingly, because when I cry, I can't talk. And then I kind of have to push myself to talk and it gets really awkward. So I have to really be silent. And I think it creates an atmosphere in the room, and maybe even virtually. I don't know how it translates virtually because I can't read the audience, but I feel that at that moment, they see my vulnerability, and it gives them, again, it allows them the opportunity to step into my world, be vulnerable, and feel what's going on. I've been put through the ringer, through this organization, through this mission. I've been through a lot, from homelessness to 5 months in bed with no cure in sight. I've been betrayed, and I have had government investigating us as human traffickers. All this now to have the same government that investigated us. They awarded us with a national program of interest, and they've asked us to expand our program to 700,000 orphans across the country. The betrayal pierced my heart, but it definitely led me to a road of self-discovery, and that increased my confidence, and it made my conviction, which I already had, I'm now unshakable. Nothing can rock me from this mission. That betrayal did something to me that caused it kind of ignited another fire. That what I had in 2012, it ignited another fire just a few years ago. And homelessness and sickness gave me the opportunity to talk with wisdom to other aspiring leaders now. Everyone thought I was crazy when I set out to do this. And so we were a social enterprise before any one company figured out that humans want to be a part of something greater than themselves. So before it was a fad, like, you know, this is social enterprise, right? It's like the thing to do. Put 1% on your company and you know, you can market that and people will come on and be your customer because of that. But we were doing it well before this ever became a thing, before it became a marketing strategy. We did it because it was the right thing to do. It was the only way to bridge the gap, right, between all that was needed and then the incredible amount of wealth that can come from a for-profit company. And so then from there, I began to state solutions. And this is what you need to do after you create the problem, you create the solution, right? You state the problem, you now state the solution. And here again, supporting details, whichever way you need to move into that direction. And however, for me, I understood that this, particularly the solution, I started speaking with unwavering determination and for almost a decade now, right? So I never let failure get the best of me. So in the beginning, when I started speaking, people looked at me and kind of felt like, oh, wow, her heart. And I allowed them to step into my world with the first story of Jose. But it was not until now, you know, after almost a decade of doing this, that people are starting to perk up and listen to what I have to say, because they've realized almost a decade later, I have never given up, even with all of the obstacles that have been thrown my way. They see that, in fact, there's too much data and there's too much passion behind what I do. So they're listening, they're perking up now. So whatever you decide to go into, stay determined and go after it. And I don't care if you fail. I don't care if you get kicked while you're down. You have to stay with it, because that is going to give you an edge that your competitor will never have. And so when I started out, people would give here and there, right? And they thought it was sweet what I was doing, but they would always say, it was just a resounding voice I would hear from people. What you're trying to do is too big. And they were cynical, I'd say, and they were rightfully so cynical. And this is why I focus more now on solutions, because the problem I speak very passionately and with conviction, because I know these kids, right? But the solution now has become so much more important. It has to be logical. It has to be thorough and thought out. They need to be creative solutions, yet feasible to attain. They have to be scalable, measurable. These are the kinds of solutions that people want to hear about. They want to hear that they're pioneering something, but yet it's practical and that they can join that. It's not something so over the moon that they can't, it's almost like not tangible, if that makes sense. So when I presented to the government, it was the government agencies, a bunch of agencies and organizations in Mendoza. It was in May 2019. I knew that the solution to the issue that I was observing and attempting to solve, that it had to be digestible. I couldn't give them what I see, the big dream, the big vision. I couldn't give them that, because they would be like, she's crazy, just like everyone else. She's crazy. There's no way we could do that. We don't have the resources. They would come up with a list of excuses as to why they couldn't achieve the big dream. So I needed to give them digestible solutions, digestible pieces for them, so that they could see that it wasn't just me doing it, but it was our job to help them. It was our job to get them in and say, no, we can do this together. I'm going to come alongside you. And so as a speaker, I think it's our job to help them along the journey and to be cognizant that what we may see as the ultimate solution, which is probably the bigger vision, the bigger dream, who we're talking to, knowing our audience is going to be essential to making sure that they agree with us in that next phase and that next journey of what we need to be, of where we need to take them and the kind of result we want, right? So I gave them the phases, I gave them steps, what was needed to make this whole thing successful. And then I was wholeheartedly committed to working with them, right? For the advancement of the sector of society, meaning the youth. I was committed to not only giving them the solutions, but also just walking beside them. So I came along and I told them, I'm not going to leave until we do this. I'm here for you. That speech ended up with, we had about 15 to 18 youth that hadn't yet, they were about to age out. They're about to age out within the next 1 to 3 years now, actually. They were about to age out. So their age is 15 to 17 years old. And they were in the room and they realized that the solution I had just given was a solution that would change their life. So they're sitting in the front row and they're crying their eyes out. And then I had government officials. I had a senator, and I heard her say, finally. And she was just nodding her head. And everyone in the room was like, yes, we can do this. You know, at that point, they were all convinced that this was a actionable, appropriate next step, and it was feasible for everyone to do together. From the first speech that I did in 2012 to the speech I did last year in 2019, I could hear a new woman in myself, right? I could hear a new leader that was rising up. It was no longer about what I wanted to do for the kids. It became about how the audience could join me to achieve and succeed and carry out the mission. It had nothing to do with help me do this, help me do this. It was, why don't we do this together? And that changed, the dynamics of that speech changed significantly, because I knew at this point to do what I needed to do. And guys, to do what you need to do is going to take an army. It's not going to take one person. And so one of the topics that I'm currently speaking about, and I thought this was so fun. Oh, and this is afterwards. Sorry, I went too fast. But one of the topics I'm currently speaking about, at least once a month I speak on this topic now. It's social enterprise and its capability as the only way to change and create solutions for massive missions of scale. When I tell people that nonprofits need to not fundraise, they laugh at me. They look at me and ask, how is that even possible? And I give them the reality. I give them gut-wrenching statistics. Remember, if we go back, right, you want to, when you create and present the problem in the first part of your body, you give them those statistics that are just going to shock them. You know, I give them shocking truths about the industry and even my own experiences, because I am the founder of a nonprofit. So how can the founder of a nonprofit say fundraising is crazy? You know, like it's almost this dichotomy. They don't understand it. So I give them information like this. The nonprofit sector has not grown in the past, has not grown past 2% of GDP since the 1970s. That means there's literally no work being done of true growth, scale, and mission. They are stagnant. Just donation after donation and voluntary hour after voluntary hour. No massive impact of scale is being made. Top talent is going to companies that pay them what they're worth. Investing into missions is looking down upon being overhead, right? It's a bad thing to have overhead. There's no creative freedom. There's no risk to be taken. Simply stifled is the nonprofit sector. And then I go into social enterprise, right? And that, on the other hand, is a for-profit company that can do whatever it pleases to do with its profits. And it just so happens that they're pleased to give a portion of it away, right? There's no ceiling. You can invest, you can be creative, you can invest in risky, but yet it's massively rewarding ROI activities. They can hire the people for what they're worth to bring in even greater sums of money, right? And at the end of the day, it's all to increase the mission of their heart. This is the only way. This is the only solution to a very serious problem. And so my first trip to Argentina, I was gifted the opportunity. It was just wonderful. I was able to go to a vineyard. It's about 10 minutes away. I believe Jermaine and I don't know, Jermaine, if I took you there, but we went about 10 minutes away down the road and from the orphanage, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I can tell you that it was a high producing revenue generator between tourism and selling of wine. And so I started to look at this and I started to say, why are we not partnering with these guys to make money for the orphans? And so when I understood, oh my, there is money here, and they're only 10 minutes down the road, why can't we partner and do this together? So I sought out and I went ahead and said, hey, can I speak to your owner? And they said, actually, the owner is here. And I had no idea who I was speaking to at that point, right? And so I had the owner come out. Her name is Julia. And she came out and she started talking to me and we started chit-chatting. And I said, you know, I'd really like to bring tourism to your winery. And I would love a percentage of it to go to this orphanage down the road. And she was kind of perplexed. She's like, so you don't want my money? She thought I was going to ask for a donation when I told her that I was there because I was with an orphanage. And I said, I mean, I would love your money. And I joke about this all the time. I'm like, I would love your money, but I think it'd be more advantageous for all of us to generate a long-term relationship. And I make money for you, and that money will generate more money for me, meaning the kids. And so we sought out for the next 9 months to create this. And she thought it was the most interesting program she had ever heard of. And to this day, we are partners, and she's now taking our youth, and she's one of the program contributors with curriculum, internships, and job placement for our youth. She supports us to the place where she gave me her black book and said, anyone you want to work with, you tell them that we support you. And I found out a little after I met with her for the first time in 2012 that they're the second largest wine producer in Argentina. In the past 2 years, they've won Winery of the World. And they're our partners, because I didn't say, give me your money, give me a donation. Yeah, I'm sure, guess what, guys? If I said that, she probably would have given me a one-time donation. In fact, I asked her to partner with us and let's make each other money. And at the end of the day, it's the driving force is not money. The driving force was getting these kids the help that they needed. And so that was a solution, right? That was a major solution for us in the social enterprise world. And because of that, I was able to start developing these tours that we started to test over in Europe. And then we brought over to Argentina, which we were on a roll. And then of course, COVID happened, right? But thankfully our partnerships are still in place. And that is an area of tourism. That is an area of social enterprise and revenue drivers for our nonprofit, right? So once you state the solution, you need to go into your benefits. Is this the benefits slide, guys? I'm not looking at the slide. I don't know, maybe. Okay, we'll stay here. But yeah, the benefits is always super enthusiastic. Yep, we're enthusiasm. So the benefits to what you are providing for this particular, whatever it is that you're persuading. For us, it's always creating a social enterprise that targets, these are the benefits, right? It's creating a social enterprise that targets the top 10% of philanthropists, which are the top earners in the US, by giving them exactly what they already do, right? They already travel and they usually drink lots of wine. So that's what we created our social enterprise around. And based on that, we were able to say, hey, what are the benefits to this? What are the benefits to creating social enterprise and showing people how they can be a part of this, right? So for us, it's giving these people the same opportunity, whether it's a top earner in the USA or someone like me who's not a top earner yet, who I can say, you know what, I want to be a part of this social enterprise. I want to be a part of this movement. So it gives them passive impact, unrestricted funding. We could restrict funding if we needed to. So for instance, if we wanted to say, I want $100,000 to go to hiring better people or more qualified people, or advertising even, right? Now the nonprofit has to do what we told them to do because it's now a restricted donation. And if anyone has questions on that, we could talk about that later on. Then there's cultural inclusion, there's no destructive mission work, and there's no wasting of resources, right? And so for me, the benefits, it's like, again, no brainer. You know, why would you not want to be a part of a social enterprise or create a social enterprise or join forces with a nonprofit to become a social enterprise to have all of these benefits? You know, again, you're not wasting resources. You are creating passive impact for people to join from all walks of life. You know, even if it's $5 to $100, they're giving, even though they're consuming what they normally consume on a daily basis. And then of course, when you go into the next phase, which is the conclusion of your speech, this is where you do your normal stuff, your key takeaways. You go back to the thesis. Always state your thesis. You say it in the beginning of your problem. You say it in the beginning of your introduction, you say it in the problem, and you say it again in the conclusion, driving it home, right? You circle back to that, and you have the call to action and a clincher. And so here's where what we start talking about, what we do on the conclusion side, we make it more like homey, like this is who we are. This is who's in my home. These are the kids we serve. And then we go into a little more detail. We do the clincher, the key takeaways is the children we serve range from newborns to 25-year-olds, right? So we are focused on 18-year-olds to 25, but what happens is before they turn 18, we help them in the orphanage system. So like when they're in the orphanage, we give them a certain amount of tools and supplies and help. And then once they hit 18 to 25, that's when they come to us because there is no other place for them to go. And sometimes they have children, so we take them on and those kids become a part of our organization. And yeah, so that from there, I, you know, at this point, I give myself the opportunity to sit, before I create this conclusion, I sit with what we're doing, right? Like, is this correct? Is this the discovery path I want to take? Is this the aspect of the business I want to talk about? Am I approaching this speech with what I know my call on this earth is all about? Am I going to give them the opportunity to join me on that call? And so I usually close with something along these lines. I have 3 major goals that I believe are attainable to seeing no abandoned youth on the street. And as a statistic, after they age out of the system, I believe that we have the goals for that. I believe that this particular youth can become a part of a sustainable, thriving community organization, and that helps them become the salt and light of the earth, right? And then I give those 3 goals. So for me, it's, you know, gain majority market share of the online wine subscription in the USA, so we can generate unrestricted and restricted revenue for the nonprofit. And our second one is to create an incubator program for the youth that will guide and support them to creating their own social enterprises if they so wish. And number 3, we want to prove our concept in the social enterprise world and the nonprofit program and we want to expand it across the nation. So we want to prove the concept, and we want to take that process and then bring it to the next nation, right? So to attain all of this, our goal is to reach $1 million in revenue, monthly donations, $1 million in monthly donations by our social enterprise by 2025, right? So now I've given them this attainable call to action, right? And it's not quite yet the call to action yet. It's the conclusion of how I went back to the thesis and I described that thesis. So technically now I've shared my heart with you, right? I've shared my story. I've shared how these children ended up in our care, the vision that God cast for this mission. And you may be, you know, at this point now I ask, right, this is where I move into the next phase of a conclusion. You may be asking yourself, how do you contribute to these children's lives and provide them workplace skills, therapy, mentor? How do you teach them to believe in themselves, right? And state the thesis. This is the exact thesis. The business sector can have the largest, most scalable solution to provide for the needs of all orphans in the USA. Then here, there are a number of ways that you can expand this vision for your life and for the vision we have for theirs. Switch from buying, right? Now here we have, this is exactly a call to action. This is how you do it. Switch from buying wine from others and start buying wine from us. Go to shop.humanitywineco.com, buy your wine, and you're already in. You can financially support us in 2 ways, right? You can sponsor a program at $100 a month, or you can become a corporate social responsibility partner. So your company can now become a social enterprise by joining our nonprofit. Corporate gifting, you can become an ambassador for our movement, and you can also travel with us to meet with your program, right? So now I've just given them several ways they can do it, whether they have the money or they don't. They can join us in a large array of opportunities, right? So that's the call to action. I want you to do this. Often I usually do 1 call to action, but I'm just listing a few here so you folks can see it. And then from there, it's the clincher. Like I used to say, in 2012, I think the clincher was, what are you waiting for? Right? And I just was like, left it, you know, and people were like, I don't know, what are we waiting for? And I forgot to give them a call to action. So, you know, I didn't give them, give me your money. I just said, what are you waiting for? And it kind of like left them hanging. So I gave them the call to action. And then from there, the clincher, join this pioneering movement and change generations and rebuild ruined cities with us, period. Right. And so, yeah, that's where I believe, you know, I became a speaker, a persuasive speaker. It became because I had to do it. I knew I had to do something for these kids. And now I'm doing it because this is my call. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I don't look at it as persuasive because remember what Mr. Pink said, it's so much more than tricking people. It's so much more beautiful than that. You are giving them your heart, your story, the reason to join you on this path to do something huge. And maybe it's like selling paper. I don't know what you would create a persuasive speech for all the time, but my persuasive speeches have a little more story to them. But maybe you could do it with paper, and talk about the need to write down your story. Right now you've gotten an inspiration, right? So yeah, you create a persuasive speech quite simply. You got your introduction, you got your body, you got your conclusion, and in there's those little steps that are different than a normal informative speech. And at the end of the day, make sure you do that call to action and the story. If you start crying, like I start crying in a presentation, let it happen. I used to be really upset. I mean, even today when I was practicing the speech, I got to the point where I smell their hair and I start crying, and it's like, man, is this ever going to not happen? And you know what, guys, I don't ever want that to stop, because the realness of what we do is still here in my heart, and it's as clear as day in my mind. And if I can translate that, that's the greatest gift I can give to people, is to feel what we feel. And so, yeah, I hope I helped you understand a little bit about persuasive speaking, but more importantly, I hope I helped you understand a little bit of our journey through a persuasive speech and how we do it with our actual story. And so, yeah, I am Maria Indenbosch. A social enterprise is the only way to do business, and I firmly believe that.
Maria, wow, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Round of applause in the classroom. Yes, that was truly amazing. So I think now, I don't know if anybody heard in the beginning, but now you kind of see why I said she's very inspirational. Again, she shared so much, but then she connected the dots and talked about how she's bringing that to action. So I think that's amazing. Again, thank you so much. So wanted to open up to questions. I'm sure some people have questions that they want to ask. If anybody in the classroom wants to speak, that's fine, or we can kind of go back and forth or online or whatever. We'll just kind of go from there and see how it flows, okay? Does anybody have anything? Just shout or whatever.
Yeah, and no question is too personal. I'm open, like I think I shared with you guys about some of my traumas in my own life. So please ask away, and I will most likely answer. I will probably answer every single question you have, no matter how personal or business oriented it is. Because I know I didn't share too much about the story, but I think I gave you enough about who we are.
So I'll ask a question to start off with, if nobody else wants to jump in yet. Have you found it more difficult to speak regarding the social enterprise or the nonprofit?
That's a great question. To find it more difficult, do you mean harder to persuade people?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. I'll say the first portion was the social enterprise, because I was pitching to investors, and investors were like, what are you talking about giving away? Because at first I was giving away 80% of my profit until my CPA, hit me over the head and was like, no, you can't do 80%. That's a negative toward you. And I was like, I know. But so I would say the social enterprise, because you are trying to start a company, and I needed investors because wine is a very expensive industry to get into. And the investors I spoke to, it was really hard for them to see the vision. Thankfully, though, it goes back to me what I say about thinking and knowing who you are. I never settled. There was one guy who was going to give us $500,000, and he wanted the majority of the company, and he wanted us to drop our giving to 10%. Had I been so desperate and not known who we were and what we stood for, I would have taken that money, and this company would not be where I see this company being. So I say, obviously knowing who you are, sticking to your guns, and that was definitely the hardest pitch, was the social enterprise, because we weren't giving 1% away, right? Like, we're giving the majority away. And thankfully I waited 4 years from that. It took 4 years to find investors, and we have 2 this week. I'm getting my third. That's why I'm in Colorado. I'm getting my third investor, and their heart and soul is my heart and soul. So I had to wait for it, but man, it was worth the wait.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you.
I have just one question, more related to the entrepreneurship side of things. So from what I understood, you started everything by yourself, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Did you ever think of pairing up with someone or finding someone with similar interests to you and starting a company with them? Or was it always like a very personal mission that you wanted to start by
Excellent.
yourself?
So, yeah, excellent question. Thank you for that, Sophia. So the social enterprise side, the wine, particularly the wine side, because the tourism is word of mouth. It's not an actual scalable company yet. So I don't really talk too much about that, but the wine company is extremely scalable. I have thought about that. And so what I did, however, there is no company, literally, there's no company in the world doing what we do. No one gives 50% to charity in the wine sector. So the way we decided to partner with people, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel, I decided to partner with the winemakers and the importers that I know very well in studying wine. And so I was able to convince them that they needed to be a part of this movement. And now if you think of the offering that we have for our wine, it's all family-owned wineries from all over the world. And so particularly speaking with this pandemic that happened, importers had to close wine companies are not selling nearly as much because they're stuck. They couldn't transport. And so depending where they are in the world, it got really bad. Like for instance, South Africa, they don't even have any wine production. So imagine all those families, they're all farmers who can't sell wine now. They can't feed their family. So what we did was by partnering with importers, we're now able to supply funding to those families back in South Africa, back in Argentina, in Portugal and Spain, all of these places, Uruguay, that we have our wine from. So that's how we partnered with people. Instead of creating our own wine, which we have chosen to go to market with other people's wine so we don't reinvent the wheel and help as many people as possible. However, I could not partner with someone because there was no other person doing what we do, right? And not many people want to give away 50% of profit. It's a very large sum of money. Thankfully though, Sophia, I have an incredible team. I learned from my nonprofit to not do this alone. The social enterprise, I have a COO, we have a CRO, we have a social media strategist, we have an advertising agency, and now we are taking on 2 interns. So it's not me anymore, just by myself. Thank the Lord, because that is a messy situation.
Well, thank you so much. It was a very inspiring presentation, and much more than just persuasive speaking. It was very inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to give a little bit about the persuasive speaking, but at the end of the day, right, sew in our story. Thanks, Sophia.
Anybody else in the room with questions?
Yeah, I have one. So, hi Maria, probably you cannot see me, Fabian from Germany. Thank you so much for the presentation, really great presentation, really inspiring. So obviously you're more than passionate about your project and about your vision and about your mission. And you touched a bit on it, like about failures. Like, can you explain it a bit more? I mean, when you're so passionate about some things, how does it feel to fail? And how did you handle that? So I think it's very, very hard, especially if you're doing it with your whole heart and investing your heart and soul in it. Could you touch a bit on that?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, because I am my hardest critic. So I often fail, like always. I'm always failing in my head, right? So how is it hard? Okay, is it hard to fail? How did I feel when I failed? It was terrible. But at the end of the day, when I had a reference point. I had kids that were molested, abused, sex trafficked. I mean, the worst of the worst of the worst. How am I worse than that? Like, my situation was never worse. So I always looked at it in the sense of, I have to keep going, because yeah, maybe a year went by and I failed. I didn't raise any money. I didn't talk to as many people as I needed to. I didn't, I didn't go down to Argentina maybe for that year. And every year that went by, I kept thinking to myself over and over again, there's another year that another kid ages out. There's another year that more children are entering into this orphanage or orphanages and that don't have therapy because I'm not producing. So I didn't have that option to say, oh, it's okay if this doesn't work. Like I can go be a marketer down the road. I promise you, I tried to work for other companies, and time again, I worked 2 and 3 jobs for the past 6.5 years. I've worked 2 to 3 jobs to support this whole organization, and failure wasn't an option. Like, if I can say, it's Fabian, correct?
Yes.
Fabian, I failed and it hurt and it stunk, and but failure was not an option, and it always went back to believing in myself and the conviction and the story that was given to me, that vision of what this could look like. That was too strong to ever ignore, and failure was ugly. I had to lose friends that would say to me, why don't you just go get a job? Why don't you go get a real job? By the way, I was working 2 or 3 jobs on top of this, right? So to hear that, I had to get rid of them. I had to say, you can't be a part of this because you're infringing on the way I have to think to make this happen. My father, I had to stop talking to him for like a year and a half because he would not understand it. My family never understood. I didn't tell my family anything I did, I'll tell you what, until this year. In 2018 or 19, it was 2018, my father finally came down to Argentina, and he did mission work with us at the orphanage, and he finally begun to understand what I had been working so hard for. And now he supports us financially each month. He tells people about us. My dad supports us on the wine side as well. My mother, she's now reading articles in which we're featured in, and she's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And I had to keep it secret because I needed to keep my mind right. So failure was terrible, and it cost a lot of sacrifice to keep going where I'm going. And it's going to still be sacrificial. But at the end of the day, that failure is not an option. These kids I don't have an option to let them down. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, if anybody has one.
Great. I see something in the chat as well. Oh, I have to, okay, great. Oh,
Some people in class. I know
That's
it's working, so.
yeah. Very sweet.
Yeah. Hi, Maria. I don't know if you can see me. Can you hear me at
I
least?
can hear you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Very inspiring. So I had a question regarding your business model. Do you think it would be replicable to other products as well, apart from wine?
What was your name?
Sanjeev.
Sanjeev? Oh, Sanjeev, that's a great question. That's the only reason we're doing this. Absolutely. We can, I have visions of doing this with many products. The idea is to prove the concept in one of the hardest industries to break and to become the category king in that particular industry, which is the wine industry. We believe that we're going to be able to crush our competitors and take market share. Once we do that, at the end of the day, this model is incredibly replicatable and scalable with multiple products. It's just, again, finding that product that will stand the test of time. Like wine, if you look at history, right? During the Great Depression, right? We're at that 100-year cycle, right? So the 1918 virus, we're on a virus again. So the Depression, it potentially could be, around the same time, 100-year cycles. So we want to look at what were the products that landed just before, during, and just after the Depression, and what could we do to make sure that we create something similar, a little more advanced, that will carry us to the next 100 years, right? And so, yeah, absolutely replicatable. And yeah, I think this is the beginning of many humanity companies.
Thank you. Do you have any examples in mind?
Lots of examples. Do you want to join my team?
Totally. I'm serious, actually. That's why I asked the question. Like, I wanted to know where you were headed with this.
Yeah. Actually, I have one, and here's the beauty. I used to hate talking about my ideas because everybody would take them, and now I realize there's so much to go around. yeah, one of them is what are they, crafted sodas. So like those really cool root beers, ginger beer, cherry beer, all of these really awesome sodas that have no alcohol in it, right? And it's delivered to your home every month. And again, social enterprise, it's people will want it, even if there is something going on in economically and financially in the world. It's something that it's not going to be very expensive, so they won't even feel it, where wine, it's a little more expensive, right? But this is something that could make them feel like they're having something very nice and special. Like pretend this is like a really nice bottle of Coke or something, right? Of a ginger beer. It makes me feel special without spending, you know, $20 on a bottle of wine, but it was only, you know, $4. Like, okay, I can do that, right? So people scale back during economic crises, but they'll still allow themselves that little special something. So I think soda, unique, really cool crafted soda is going to be one of the next options for us.
All right. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Craft beer, I'll give you that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. Thank you.
I have another question. I guess maybe this would be the last one since it's not too many lined up. But a lot of what you shared came from a particular moment in your life when you went to Argentina for the first time. And so a lot of this story spins off of that. I have a very similar experience, as you know. But for those of us in the room that may or may not have that specific call in their life yet, how would you recommend finding that piece or that driving force that will then inspire their lives or their persuasion?
That's a great question, Jermaine. And I think it goes right back to that first point that I had, the ability to carve out a discipline in your life that gives you time to think. Sitting down and journaling, like I'm looking at my journal, it's right in front of me. I journal, I ponder, I sketch. And I think if you, like I said, I think I said the excuse, if you need to persuade someone to buy your paper, find something about paper that is universal, right? And when you write something down, like you can put something in your computer all day long, but the moment you write it down, it's like this concrete thing you can't erase, right? Like imagine the kind of persuasive speech you could speak to on that now, not just selling paper, right? I think it's taking the time to sit down, ponder, connect the dots, and you got to think about those connecting points, because you're right, not everyone has these life altering moments, these aha moments, especially in business, right? I mean, usually you go into a field and you don't even realize that's not like even where you wanted to go, but somehow you ended up there and you have to speak passionately about something. I think you can find passion if you give yourself the time to think about things, connecting the dots, making things more human, especially in a world where today things are becoming more and more non-human and more and more disconnected. People, you have to, I think it goes back to thinking human nature. Study human nature. At the end of the day, no matter what happens in our world, no matter what kind of technology, robots, pandemic, anything happens in our world, human nature is human nature. That will never change. And so if we could study human nature, the need to be seen, heard, loved, safety, security, if we can speak to that in any simple way of connection to a particular product or company, whatever it is that you're trying to speak on, you will find of real passion there. And I think you can craft it up from there.
So,
Awesome. Thanks, Jermaine.
so again, just want to thank you so much for your time today. Like I said, for me, it was definitely amazing. I think everyone that was able to join us appreciated it as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to supporting you, following you along, and watching your businesses grow and thrive, and showing the world that this can happen and it will happen. So thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you, Jermaine. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And please follow me and connect with me. Do whichever way you can to get a hold of me. I'm so inspired by you guys that you have taken time out of your life to achieve an even greater accolade for yourself as a master, as even if you're just graduating at your first 4 years, but just you guys are so inspiring, and keep at it. I'd love to I'm here for anyone who wants advice or just to say, hey, run something by me. I'm here for you guys, and keep doing what you're doing, guys, and don't let anyone say you can't do it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you.
Really quick, throw your contact info back on there, just so anybody can grab it.
Okay.
Everybody that's in the club, we look forward to having you back next week. We'll be announcing what the topic will be, and so hope to see you here or online.
Thank you all. Have a great one. Good night.
Good night. Oh, good day.
Thank you.